Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to be reviewing Avatar: The Way of Water. This is my most anticipated movie of the year. Honestly, last night when I went and watched it, I couldn't even believe that this was happening. I remember being a huge fan of the first Avatar. I remember looking at IMDb and kind of seeing when Avatar 2 was supposed to come out. And there was that one point on IMDb where Avatar 2 was slated for 2014. And then it just kept getting pushed out. Then it was slated for 2017. And then they didn't actually really start working on the movie until 2017 as far as actually filming it and stuff. And then finally, in 2022, 13 years after the original came out, we finally get the sequel to Avatar. And I was not disappointed at all. I went into this movie with a lot of high hopes because, like I said, I'm a huge fan of the first Avatar movie. So went into it with a lot of high expectations. The trailers all looks great, and I loved my time watching this movie. The very opening of this movie, you feel like James Cameron is welcoming you back to Pandora. And it felt like I also felt like I just never left. Maybe it's because I just recently rewatched the first one back on the re-release back in September. But even so, just seeing the mountains, seeing the floating mountains, seeing the forest and everything as the movie opens up, it felt like I was at home again in the world of Pandora. And I really like the way that movie opens like that. Now, this is a long movie. We got about a 3 hour movie, and basically, each act is an hour long. You got the first act of the movie, it's going to be the first hour. Second act is going to be the second hour, and the third act of the movie is going to be the third hour. So the movie is long, and it does feel its length. I'm not going to sit here and try to say that it doesn't feel its length. But what this movie does, and what it does a lot better than what the first Avatar did, is the character development. In the first Avatar, as much as I love the movie, and I like characters like Jake and Neytiri, the first Avatar didn't necessarily have a bunch of character development with a lot of the other characters. And that's what I like about this, the new one, Avatar: The Way of Water, is because each character is kind of able to get their own kind of time to shine. Now we already know Jake and Neytiri rather well, but now in this movie we get to know them as parents, and we get to know their 4 children. And then as far as the enemies go, the human enemies, which are now some of them are now part Navi as well. Then Quaritch is back in this movie, the villain from the first movie. We get to know more about Quaritch as well, and I really enjoyed the fact that this movie took its time to really let us learn the characters because what in the first Avatar, you really loved the world of Pandora. And you love Jake as a character, and you probably love Neytiri as a character, but that's really about it. And in this movie, not only do you love the world of Pandora, not only do you fall in love with the sea people, but you fall in love with just all the characters as well. And that really works because there's a lot of emotional beats this movie has to hit. And if you don't like the characters, those emotional beats are going to miss. And I just really like the aspect of how much they focus on the characters in this movie. And much like the first one, James Cameron likes to focus a lot about the world in this movie. So you're sitting there, and when we do get into the part where we're finally in the water, we're at the sea, it is mesmerizing. I sit here and I watch this movie in IMAX 3D, and my jaw was like to the floor. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the very first Avatar looks good, even in today's standards, but this movie, it blows away the first one if that's even possible. Me just sitting there in the audience, I couldn't believe what I was seeing was even real, and then knowing that the water and stuff in this movie is not even real water. It's like all CGI'd water. It looks. Part of me is like, this movie looks better than real life in some aspects, and I couldn't believe that. And as far as the 3D aspect of this movie goes, it is really, really good. We all know that the first Avatar is really well known for having great 3D and everything like that. And Avatar: The Way of Water, it basically continues that tradition. Because sometimes with some 3D movies, when they're really badly converted, sometimes we can sit there and it might hurt our eyes a little bit. But at no point in Avatar: The Way of Water were my eyes hurting at all. I mean, I wear glasses. The 3D glasses fit over my eyes perfectly well. So yeah, so the characters are good. The story, the story is very much has a lot of the similar beats, and I'll actually get more into those beats here in a second. But the characters, the story, and the world are all absolutely fantastic. So just going into this movie, as far as just a spectacle experience goes, is absolutely breathtaking. I want to talk a little bit about the music and how the music kind of goes hand in hand with the beat. So unfortunately, James Horner, who scored the first Avatar movie, passed away. So this one isn't scored by him. And what's unfortunate is they use a lot of use a lot of the same music from the first Avatar movie in this movie. And now I don't want to talk like that's a bad thing because it's not inherently a bad thing that they did that. But the unfortunate part is so much of the music in Avatar: The Way of Water is from the first one that it kind of there were certain aspects where I was really like going into this movie. I with some of the new shots and some of the new scenery we're seeing, I was really hoping we would get some of the new music. And there is some new music in it, but none of the new music is better than James Horner's music, and that's in a way that's kind of frustrating because there's some beats that happen in this movie, some story plot points that are just they kind of go hand in hand, kind of with what happened with the first Avatar movie. And not only are the plot points the same, but then the music is the exact same as well. And at that point, it kind of feels like I don't know if maybe they just didn't have the right music in this movie. So like the way this movie was originally scored, maybe they just didn't think it worked, so they just pulled the music that they had from the first one and put it in the scene instead. But I kind of was a little bit let down by the new music in this movie. I mean, James Horner is great, and I love his score of the first movie, but I would have liked to have seen a lot more new stuff in this movie and a lot more just like kind of like a better score in that aspect. But that's more of like a minor nitpick at that point. And other than that, the story, it's just as basic as the first one. The only real difference is that you're going to get much more character development in this movie. So if you're someone who didn't really care for the first Avatar movie, mostly because you didn't really find the characters interesting, that's something that you, when going into Avatar: The Way of Water, that's something that's probably going to be fixed for you because a lot, the characters are interesting in this movie, and we get to spend a lot more time with them. And that doesn't just go with our heroes. It doesn't just go with Jake and Neytiri and their kids. That goes with Quaritch as the villain and everything as well. Everybody is just way more fleshed out in this movie. And the third act of this movie, which is an hour long, is basically one giant battle sequence. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, James Cameron just really outdoes himself again. A lot of people like to call him the king of sequels, and really, I believe it as well. I mean, Aliens is amazing. Terminator 2 is amazing. And then you have now Avatar: The Way of Water, which just absolutely blows the first one away, both story-wise, character-wise, and just as far as pure spectacle goes. I mean, this is a movie experience. Avatar: The Way of Water is a movie that needs to be experienced in theaters. I can't imagine, especially since they don't really make 3D TVs anymore. There's no way you can really get the experience of this movie at home. So I can't recommend this movie enough as far as just a movie to see in the theaters. And it was just and so for someone like me who is such a huge fan of Avatar, I mean, I went into this with such high expectations that I could have easily have been let down. All right, and that was like my biggest fear going into this movie is what if this movie isn't as good as I think it's going to be because of just how massive of a fan I am of James Cameron and how much of a fan I am of the first Avatar movie. But I'm just happy to say that Avatar: The Way of Water is really, really good. It's an absolutely great theater going experience, and I definitely recommend everybody see it, especially in 3D and especially in IMAX 3D. Even if the closest IMAX to you is about an hour away, I'm telling you, drive that hour and definitely go ahead and watch this movie. Anyway, if any of you guys have seen Avatar: The Way of Water, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. And like always, I hope to see you back in my next video.